A lot of these tier one automotive companies have plants all over the world. And I think it's really going to cause companies like those to rethink their supply chain.
Following is my conversation with Bill Gryzenia. Bill is CEO of DealerShop. Bill has been on this amazing digital transformation journey for many companies. This is a wonderful case study and a lot of pragmatic advice on how companies should think about all different aspects of a digital transformation journey. Bill has been very candid in terms of describing his experiences, priorities, leadership styles. It's awesome. Then we ventured into Bill's passion about and knowledge on electrical vehicles and that market, different segments and where that market is going, different types of battery models and strategies that are evolving, and much, much more on the topic of autonomous vehicles and just in general, tying all different aspects of digital transformation within a company. This is truly Harvard Business School case study like material coming from a practitioner executive. I had a lot of fun speaking with my friend, Bill Gryzenia. You are going to have a ton of fun as well. And now, here is my conversation with Bill. Bill, sir, how are you?
Great, I'm John. How are you?
Very good, very good. I've been waiting for this opportunity to speak with you, my friend, in this forum. And we live, Bill, in this post-COVID arena where digital transformation is an important topic for a lot of organizations and figuring out how to build these capabilities and more robustness and resilience. And you, sir, have been on an awesome journey where you have done it multiple times, learned from the very best, and have been practicing it as a CEO of these wonderful corporations. So let's just start there, Bill, that what sort of, tell us a little bit about your journey and what does digital transformation mean to you in your work?
I've been passionate about technology for a long time. When I graduated from business school about 20 years ago, I moved to Silicon Valley and had the opportunity to work with some of the best of the best, and really have been passionate about technology ever since that journey. Before business school, I was working in heavy industry and decided to take the turn to high tech after business school. And then after a couple of years of working in high tech, I decided to go back to industry and apply what I'd learned in tech in the Valley to industry. And it's been interesting because many of these companies that are in the Midwest that have been in operation for hundreds of years are trying to figure out what they're going to be for the next 100. I worked at Dana, for example, for about 5 years, as you well know. And one of the things that we talked about often there was if you look at the market caps of these industrial companies compared to sales, they're typically trading at about 0.5 times sales. And then you compare that to the high tech companies out there, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the cloud computing companies. It's a factor of sales. And so the objective was never how do we get to 2-3 times sales? It was more, how do we get to even 1 time sales from a market cap standpoint? And that was really all about, well, we need to become a technology company. That's really the future. And so I've been on a journey since that time at Dana, and then after Dana, working with a variety of companies and helping them along that path.
So if I'm an old economy company, and as you described, then irrespective of my uh, industry category or whatnot, how would you take us on a digital transformation journey, enterprise value creation journey? What are the right questions to think or things to do? What does that roadmap, Bill, look like, if there is a commonality to a roadmap or playlist, if you will?
I think the best way to go about it is listening to the customer. That's how I did it after I spent about 5 years at Dana. I left to become the CEO of a manufacturing company in Michigan called Axle Tech as the CEO. And one of the things that I realized quickly was that there was some uh, opportunities beginning in electrification. This was well before, of course, recently electrification has become much more popular. But
Yeah.
5 years ago, it was just starting, and very few manufacturing companies, whether it was the suppliers or the OEMs, were really investing at that point in time. I made a trip over to our France facility and saw that our team over there was working on a project for a company in Paris, and then came back to the States and found a few more opportunities that our team in the US was working on. So I got with a couple of the other executives from the company and had the opportunity as a result to meet with a bunch of prospective customers, and was able to put together very quickly a business plan that said, I think there's a real opportunity for us to get in at the ground floor and create electric powertrains for the heavy truck market and the bus market. And so we were owned by private equity, the Carlyle Group. I got support from the leadership at Carlyle to make a pretty significant investment early on in all things EV. And it really started with taking the Carlyle team out to California to meet with a bunch of these customers that I'd mentioned I'd been working with. And it was clear that there was a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement around all things EV. I was able to realize it very early. And so we built up a team in our offices here in Michigan, and ultimately ended up selling that business 2.5 years later. And it was a real, quite a success story for us and for Carlisle.
That was, in fact, an awesome success story. What was Bill, that journey like in terms of what kind of systems you had to put in place, and how did people work effectively with each other and innovate, came up with these innovative solutions? Suddenly, people have to keep the current business running as well. So what was that recipe like, if you maybe unpack it for us a little bit?
Well, the interesting thing was that, again, the company had been around for over 100 years, and they pretty much had been doing the same thing successfully for 100 years. It was supplying powertrain components to mainly, the heavy duty markets, off highway and heavy truck and aftermarket. But they had never gotten into things like electric motors, and we didn't have a single software engineer on staff, for example. And of course, even on the gearing side, we didn't have engineers that were focused on the gears that are the higher quality gears that were required for electric powertrains. And so we really had to go out and find a whole new set of people, which was difficult. Fortunate for us is that because we were so early, we were able to pick those people up. But if you were to try to do the same thing today, it would be much more difficult because everyone is looking for the same types of talent. So we went out and hired about 25 people with these types of skill sets, and complemented by a couple outside firms. Like on the software side, we had a couple folks in-house that were responsible for the software, but we also were able to find partnerships with companies mainly in Europe and specifically in the UK to help us complement and get that done in a time frame that fit with the customers. But because of course everybody wants the products very quickly, and when you're doing it from scratch, there's a lot of work to be done. So we had to work with outside companies to get it done quickly.
In this journey, Bill, how about some core infrastructure systems or core processes that are part of a digital transformation journey? How should an old economy company should think about their future ERP systems or business intelligence systems or other sort of, information systems that bring people together, help them make better decisions? I know that, you mentioned your tech orientation, but how have you been using technology to your advantage, even for these core business process side of things?
Well, maybe another example would help to answer that question. More recently, about a year and a half ago, I started a new venture at a company called DealerShop, which is the largest buying group focused on auto dealerships in North America. We have about 3,000 auto dealerships as customers. This company was founded actually under a different name, under the name of Leader Auto Resources up in Montreal, Canada. We decided when we acquired this company in partnership with a private equity company out of Cleveland, Resilience Capital, to rebrand the company as DealerShop. But one of the first things that we realized is that the company had not invested in systems in a very long time, which was really operating with one arm behind our back. And so we had planned on making changes to those systems, not on day one, of course, because we had a lot of other things to get our arms around, but later on in 2021. But once we really got into it, we decided that we needed to address this immediately. So we very quickly ran an RFQ process for not only the back-end ERP systems, but all the front-end systems as well, the customer-facing e-commerce portal that we created. They had all that in place, but it was really, really limited. So we kicked that off in the second quarter of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. And we were live in early December, which is fairly unheard of. I know you've been involved with a lot of these projects as well. I've been involved with many in my career, and never have I done one in call it 6 months, let alone, just the ERP system, but we were doing the front end system on top of it. Now, of course, we've had to improve on those and continue to add additional functionality. But that really, just to get to your question, the processes inherent in the ERP system that we selected, as well as in the front end e-commerce system, has been transformational for our business. And so that's really what we're doing here at DealerShop, is we've rolled out all these new systems which provide us with great capabilities, and we're still just getting started. There's a lot of other things that we're talking about with our customers and making the fulfillment of their orders from us even more automated.
You have, Bill, seen both flavors of technology over the years, the old classic on-premise IT implementations, and then suddenly now, in this day and age, we all live with cloud computing and many reliable cloud computing solutions available. Maybe you want to share your experience as a CEO who has been implementing different flavors of digital transformation technologies over the years, that what advantage or benefits, if any, you see that cloud computing and all that cloud infrastructure offer to these companies that are trying to reinvent themselves and stay relevant, as you mentioned, for a long period of time?
My background was always in on-prem IT. And when we came and started DealerShop a year and a half ago, we only looked at solutions that were cloud-based. And so everything that I had mentioned previously with the back-end enterprise resource planning system, as well as the front-end e-commerce tool, is 100% cloud-based. From a security standpoint and a flexibility standpoint, there's no doubt that that's the future. And so, when you think about security as well, the cloud-based system for us provides additional security, which even companies our size, this is a smaller company than some of the other ones that I had mentioned previously with Axle Tech and Dana, are vulnerable from a security standpoint. And so to have that extra layer of security that we were afforded by moving all these systems to the cloud has been comforting.
One thing, Bill, that we hear quite a bit from companies, both old economy, new economy, is that business intelligence and analytics is still a challenge. And having access to information, make smart, data-driven decisions is still a challenge today. So first, two-part question. What is your experience like then and now in terms of accessibility to quality information that is easily consumable and is high quality so that people can make smart decisions at all levels? And just at your level, your own sort of, I know that you are very data-driven, very analytic-driven, and we all need more information, whether first-party data or third-party data. So would love to just hear how your approach on business intelligence, plus just the challenges that you have seen over the years and even now, when it comes to quality and timely business intelligence.
When we went live with our systems in December of last year, we had a bunch of reports that we required to go live for the launch. And one of the things that the way we broke it out was that we had I think it was about 15 reports that we said we're not going live unless we have these 15 reports available for launch. And then we had a whole list of other reports that were more, okay, we can live without these on day one, but we're going to need these very quickly. So those were I called those the 90-day reports. And so 3 months later, we had a bunch of additional data. And then ongoingly, now it's been about almost a year. We're coming up on a year in December. We've continued to add additional functionality, additional reports, which, as you mentioned, is super important when you're running a business, whether it's a small business or a big business. We had to make some trade-offs. It was like I previously mentioned, it was very, very unusual to go live in 6 months with all these systems. And so we couldn't say we were going to go live with 30 reports in the system on day one. We had to make some sacrifices, and we picked the most important ones. We launched those, and then we've been adding ever since. And I'd say we're still just getting started. If you think about things like corporate dashboards or executive dashboards, we still don't have those, but we're working to launch those. Those are part of the roadmap for next year for us.
What is, Bill, your own leadership management style? There are many styles out there. Would love to hear what your style is and how you lead your people, how you manage your business, which few metrics you believe are universal and time proven and relevant. So we'd love to hear more about how you do it?
I've pretty much worked with private equity for most of the last 20 years, either in positions like I am now as CEO of DealerShop, or in board capacities or board advisor capacities. And when you're working with private equity, it's really two metrics. It's cash and it's EBITDA. And so those are the two most important metrics. Now, of course, sitting in the corner office, you've got metrics for all the functions, whether it's purchasing and savings on the purchasing side of the fence, or turns and inventory on the operations side of the fence. So each function has key metrics that that we define at the beginning of the year, and that we hold the team accountable throughout the year, and that's what their objectives are, and their compensation is tied to that as a result. So having those metrics is super important, but the most important one, again, with private equity, is cash, followed by EBITDA.
How, in this day and age, Bill, you lead people, motivate people, encourage them to work with each other? We certainly, as of late, the universe have been witnessing people switching employers and gigs, and it looks like we all play the talent game, and it's all about the talent in a company. So what's your strategy to attract talent, retain talent, and then keep them gainfully employed? And how do you personally, as a CEO, connect with people in terms of the shared vision, and how we all come together to make it happen? So would love to kind of zero in on that a little bit.
We've like most companies, we've definitely dealt with that issue in 2021. Fortunately, we haven't had any turnover in several quarters now, which has been great. But there was a period earlier this year where that was an issue, because there's a lot of companies that are knocking on the doors of our employees, and we did lose a couple employees early in the year as a result. Communication, I think, is super important. I like to lead by example. I'm very passionate about what I do, and people see that, and it can be infectious with the team. And so I try to communicate and get everybody together as soon as possible. We do regular meetings with the whole company to make sure that everyone's on the same page and they understand kind of where we are in hitting our goals throughout the year. And you have to be very cognizant of all the employees in your company, and make sure that you understand where people are, and be communicating with them to make sure that if there's issues, that you address them quickly.
As of late, the importance of supply chains have grown quite a bit. What is your take on supply chains and its importance within an organization, and what kind of rethinking people have to do from a digital transformation perspective when it comes to supply chain challenges and globalization challenges? We, Bill, just as an example, we work with a lot of companies, we as Algo, who have high-tech devices that they sell, computing devices, gadgets, other similar things. And certainly availability of chips have been a challenge. The interesting thing is, all the specialized chips that everybody needs specifically for their stuff, people have good game plans and plan A and plan B and a lot of robustness and resilience in place. And everybody sort of assumed that all the run-of-the-mill chips and ICs, all the run-of-the-mill silicon that is totally fungible, that would always be available. And now that is the one that is not available. So it's not the special components, because people have all this extra attention, consciousness on special components.
Right.
These normal bread and butter components, supply chain, catalog, whatever you want to call it, fungible components, that is where we are seeing a lot of these challenges. So first, it would be good to know what sort of challenges are you seeing from your vantage point, and then just your take on the importance of supply chain and how people should rethink their supply chain strategies.
Well, I think that's the big thing, is that most of the companies that we work with at DealerShop are very large multinational companies that, fortunately for us, do most of their manufacturing in the US. And so we have not had huge issues. There are a couple suppliers that we work with that do import from overseas. And so we got in front of this about 9 months ago and put a little extra inventory on the shelf as a result. We didn't have that in our plan, but we're certainly glad now that we did do that. Yeah, I think it's, I think back at some of the other roles that I've had in the last 10 years. A lot of these tier one automotive companies have plants all over the world. And I think that it's really going to cause companies like those to rethink their supply chain and whether or not it makes sense to continue to manufacture as much as they are today, to save 10% and move everything to far off places like China and India. I think there's no doubt that you're going to see more onshoring happening, and I think it's already happening. We have dual sourced some of the parts that with these suppliers that I had mentioned that did import products from overseas. We started buying from companies that we knew were manufacturing in the US, even though it was more expensive. We were stocked out on a couple of these components that were the higher volume ones, and even though it was more expensive, at least we were able to fulfill our customers' orders. Their expectation when you're working in automotive is very high fill rates, and especially on what I call the milk and egg parts, the ones that they expect you to have. And a lot of those parts were ones that were imported from overseas. The high volume ones are the ones that you see companies, especially in China, going after. And so we had some issues there, and we had the dual source to US based companies, and that really helped.
No, that is awesome. In your business, Will, how much reliance do you have to have on a quality demand forecast, and what is it that you guys forecast, and at what level you guys forecast, what level of granularity, and for what kind of time horizons? And then we see, again, you mentioned old economy, new economy, digital transformation. We see a lot of disconnected, disjointed processes between supply side of things, demand side of things, and in between the sales, finance, account side of things. So we just would love to know first, what kind of forecasts or you guys are doing, and how these different parts of demand chains and supply chains come together, or they should come together.
That was one of the main reasons for us quickly rolling out the new ERP system back in late 2020, was because all of the demand planning was done in an Excel spreadsheet, very manually. And when you're talking about thousands of SKUs, there's only so much that you can do in an Excel spreadsheet. So we rolled out the ERP system, the cloud-based ERP system that we ended up deploying had a very sophisticated MRP system. So manufacturers resource planning, to allow us to forecast more intelligently the parts that we stock. Today we have one warehouse in upstate New York that's managed through a 3PL relationship, third-party logistics. And we are using this module that is a part of the ERP system to help us forecast demand for all of these components. One of the things that we had to do, again, back to the milk and eggs analogy, is very important in aftermarket, which is really what we do, is that you have to put parts into different categories based on the importance to the customer. Some parts that we sell to our customers are those milk and egg parts you need to be supplying at a 99+% fill rate. And so the system that we have now, the MRP system that we have now, allows for that type of sophistication. And then of course there's B parts and C parts, and that's all part of the sophistication of the system. So we're just getting started. We're not doing a lot. I know Algo's takes that to the next level with artificial intelligence, and we're not to that point. I would say that this really was a transformational year for us, just going from call it old economy to bridging the gap to new economy. And I think we're really going to get there next year as we continue to move things forward and do some of the things that I had mentioned.
No, that is so awesome to hear. One other pattern that we see out there, Bill, is that this whole SKU proliferation, where sometimes SKUs can get out of control and you just have too many SKUs, and people lose track of which SKUs are a substitute of other SKUs. And suddenly there is a Pareto curve there in place where some of them contribute to most of your volume, most of your margin, but then you also have this long tail. How do you manage, with all the pressure on inventory and inventory turns and whatnot? How do you guys make decisions on SKU base? And then I'm sure that in your ever sort of growing universe of DealerShop, there are customer needs and segments that in different segments, the needs are different. So how do you go about the whole customer product SKU segmentation?
We have a great IT leader at DealerShop that I spent a lot of time talking about this topic with. And today we are managing I call it the PIM data, the product information management, through our ERP system, but it's really not ideal. So one of the things that we have in our annual operating plan for 2023 is to roll out a PIM system, because we are selling our products. We have the ERP system, we have the e-store, and then we have other channels to market that all are kind of managed independently today. There's no central funnel PIM system that manages all this SKU level data. So we are planning on that for next year. We went from basically having one system to multiple systems in 2021. And now we have an opportunity, I'll call it, to really get our arms around it more, because it's, there's a lot. The data is so important when you think about things like search engine optimization, and you just need to. It's a lot of data to manage when you're talking about thousands of SKUs, and so to do it right now, we're piecing it all together with the ERP system, the system that comes with the e-store, but it's not centralized. And so you could see already we're developing differences between the systems, and that's how we're planning on addressing it next year.
Bill, if you have to just describe to our audience that what business DealerShop is in, and who are your customers, and how do they experience value? How do you create an experience for your customers? What would you say about that?
We are a buying group for automotive dealerships, mainly automotive dealerships that have collision centers, because we sell a lot of components to the auto dealership body shops. And believe it or not, only about 30% of the auto dealerships in the US have body shops. And so those are the ones we like to we mainly work with what we call multi-rooftop dealerships. So dealerships that have more than one location and that have body shops. And we supply those dealerships with savings opportunities across a spectrum of products that they purchase. Basically, everything that the auto dealership purchases, with the exception of the parts that they buy directly from their OEM partners. We take the scale that we bring with these 3,000 dealerships to the suppliers and negotiate national pricing contracts, then pass on those savings to the dealerships. So that's how it works. And it's everything from, office supplies to shop equipment. We even have programs for health insurance, and that can save our customers a pretty substantial amount of money.
That is so awesome. And I assume that, all your dealer customers have access to your software and systems in terms of ordering and, what other information they need, or whichever way you guys have to engage with them.
We have a field team that calls on our customers on a very regular basis, which is really, you'd asked about, what's the differentiator, and that's really important. There are online only companies, certainly, that, our dealerships the question could be, why don't they buy their janitorial supplies or office supplies directly from Amazon or from eBay? And the difference really for us is we've been doing this for a very long time. The company was started 40 years ago in Canada. They entered the US about 20 years later. So we've been operating in the US for a little over 20 years. And we have a field team of experts that have been, that know a lot about this industry, that will help the customers with their orders and recommend new products. And we're constantly coming up with, so it's more than just supplying product. There's real value add there when you think about the things that we can offer our customers.
Internally, Bill, what we are seeing over the past few years is a lot of focus on remote collaboration, and then companies are using tools like Slack or Teams or other similar tools, and you hear people saying, "Hey, we as a company, we live on Slack now, or we live on Teams," or whatever the tool of choice is. What is that pattern like for your organization in terms of working remote versus in the office, or a hybrid model, and how do you see that evolving? And I'll share with you this, that we post-COVID, so we are a software company, we totally embraced remote and digital first, and we implemented tools and processes to work together that way, which is now our dominant mode. And we get together in our office space when we have to, but people have the flexibility to work from their home offices. We invested there. And for us as a tech company, that was almost a gift. That was a requirement, because we have to sort of, take a look at how others in our industry are doing. But just in general, on remote collaboration, how is that experience like for your company?
I would say that, certainly for my whole career, I've done a lot of traveling. And then we completed this acquisition in March of 2020, and the travel stopped. The travel stopped for a long time. And I would say that in the last couple months, it's been really interesting, because I've been on 9 flights in the last 2.5 months. So the travel has come back for DealerShop, and it's not just me, but a lot of the team here at the company. We've started to travel again. We were just out in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago at the SEMA and Apex show, which of course was canceled in 2020. So it was not nearly as busy as I'm used to seeing it in years past, but I would say that we're getting back to a sense of normal. We do have a corporate office here in Michigan, where most everybody does work from the office. We do allow people to adopt, call it the hybrid model, where they do also work from home. But I would say we're not like Algo with the software on the, which is very, very typical what you're seeing with software companies that where everyone basically has the option to work from home. We have been working. There was a period of time when we did all work from home at the beginning, certainly the first and second quarters of 2020. But this year, most of us are actually in the office.
Switching topics, Bill, a little bit. I know that how passionate you are about uh, electric vehicles, and where do you see, just as a uh, consumer, as a person who is knowledgeable about that industry, where do you see that trend going? And then maybe a part B of that question is many consumer-facing electrical vehicle strategies, EV strategies, also have some kind of autonomous driving as part of their strategy too. And I'll share with you that, my experience with different autonomous driving systems, I see them as, more driver assist. I personally don't feel comfortable without naming names, even with the top ones that are out there, to put sort of my life in the hand of that system and go totally sort of, in that trust mode of autopilot. But would love to hear first, two-part question, that where is the whole EV phenomenon going? And then just your take on autonomous driving, and what do you see as challenges?
Well, I'll take the second part first. The on the autonomous side, I actually am a board advisor to a company in Plymouth, Michigan called Traxon that is taking that exact approach that you had mentioned, which is it's going to be a long time before you see Class 8 trucks driving down the highway autonomously. And in the meantime, there's techniques that you can deploy that that automate the driving, that could save the fleet owners a lot of money on things like fuel. And we've been able to show with their products up to an 8% savings on fuel. And when you're talking about fleets that have 10,000 trucks, it's a significant saving. And so this is a company that I got involved with about a year and a half ago that's proved this, and they're doing very well. So I'm a big believer in that as well. I drive an EV that has the autonomous functionality, but it really is what you said, which is I'm not using it for anything but really more of an advanced cruise control is really what it comes down to. On the EV side, it's been super exciting. We got into EVs at Axle Tech early days, almost 5 years ago. And a lot of these companies that you've seen go public in the last 12 months through these SPAC mechanisms were customers of ours. And so I know the senior leadership of a lot of these companies that are now public companies and working very hard to create revenues and catch up to what Tesla started many years ago. So I think it's great to see these companies that, for sure, when those companies got started, they weren't sure things either. And then with all the momentum and the tailwind that's happened in the last couple of years, there's no doubt that we've hit that inflection point. And there will be companies that make it, and there'll be companies that won't make it. But there's certainly some really good ones out there. I'm super excited to see more options for the driver coming out, even yet this year, but certainly into 2022, there's going to be a lot more options for the consumer. And I can tell you, once I'm hooked on the benefits, and it's just super interesting to see. And it really ties into this whole digital transformation discussion, because when you think about things like the powertrain, and there's going to be a lot of winners and losers, not only on the OEM side, but also on the supply side. And so that's why it's super important that all these tier one suppliers figure out, what they're going to, what piece of the puzzle they're going to be focused on in the next 100 years, because a lot of the components that they've been making historically aren't necessary in an EV vehicle. So that's what we saw it as an opportunity at Axletech to go from just being a standard axle supplier to a complete powertrain supplier, because there's no engine in an EV. So we were taking on all the functions of the engine, like I mentioned with the software. So you can look at it and say, well, I'm going to go from supplying a $10,000 axle to supplying a $30,000 system. And that's why that was really the premise of what got us excited was, boy, this kind of opportunity to triple the size of your market does not come along very often.
No.
And so we're going to go after it with a vengeance. And that's how we approached it. The other interesting thing I'll add on the EV side is what's happening on the battery front, because that's really, I think, the gold rush of the current. I refer to it as the gold rush, because there's a lot of companies out there that are trying. You think about solid state batteries or replacing graphite anodes with silicon anodes. There's a lot of companies that are focused on making that happen, and it's all about cost, and it's about energy density. And I think that's a good place to be these days, because that's the biggest piece of these EVs is really the battery.
So well said. What would you expect from the battery side of innovation over the next 3 to 5 years? There are many different, it looks like, schools of thought, or so who do you see, Bill? Which of these ideas you see are winning over the course of the years? And I know it's a tough question at some level, it's a rhetorical question, but any your personal sort of take on these different strategies or innovations that are out there?
I think the solid state batteries are still quite a long way out. I know a couple companies that have gone public are doing well, but even if you listen to some of their reports, they're still years away from production. As Elon Musk always says, it's easy to create a prototype, but to take it into production, that's the hard part. And that there's no doubt that there's a lot of companies out there that have created prototypes that are doing extremely well on the battery side, but then transitioning that to high volume production, be it on the consumer electronic side or on the EV vehicle side, is the hard part. I don't think there's going to be one technology or one company that it's going to be spread out across a number of. The market is so huge, and so you're going to see a lot of companies that are included in the supply chain and winners in this ultimately. I think that's what's going to happen. The other interesting thing that I'm keeping close tabs on is the whole hydrogen versus electric on the heavy duty side. You look at the what's happening in China, and there's a lot of activity on the hydrogen powered vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in China. You're seeing some of that even in the US and in Europe. And so the debate, hydrogen fuel cell versus electric, will be playing out over the course of the next year or so. And that'll be really interesting to see kind of how that plays out.
We also see, Bill, and hear that with EV and all these other innovations, that a lot of such design innovation, even early stage manufacturing, is happening on the state side, opening many more opportunities. Do you, from your vintage point, do you see that as well, creating all kind of opportunities in the US market for our workforce, and especially on the manufacturing side of things?
Well, I think there's a ton of activity happening in the U.S. Of course, China's off to a big lead when it comes to things like batteries.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of catch up that has to happen in the U.S. There's no doubt that a lot of the traditional OEMs and tier one suppliers have had a wake up call recently. If you look at things like Rivian and Tesla, and there's no doubt that those were wake up calls for a lot of companies, and so companies that the traditional companies simply can't afford to ignore this. And so you are seeing investment now in the U.S. I think just this, I think it was today that Ford had their grand opening of their first factory here in Michigan, where they're going to be making the Lightning electric truck, which is super exciting. Or maybe that was the Hummer electric vehicles, where they're making that here in Michigan. But anyway, that was opening today. And then, of course, there's a lot of these other companies that have gone public through these SPAC mechanisms are all putting in manufacturing capacity. There's a company in out west, Nikola, that you might have heard of, that was fuel cell electric, and I know they're in the process of launching a plant in Arizona as well. So there's a lot of activity.
Yeah, which is good news for everybody. A few audience questions, Bill. This one is that software companies, they usually have product teams to design products, and then the product teams work closely with marketing. The question is that for companies like DealerShop and other companies who are on this digital transformation journey, who is doing that product design function where product is not all software, it is a lot of it is experience and other things. It is being done in marketing, or is it a collaboration between different teams?
Well, we like to, one of the things that I've learned over the years is you got to be careful not to, we sit in the corporate headquarters here, even though we do a lot of traveling. I try to be very careful not to create products or offer products to our customers that are dreamt up by the corporate team and have limited insight from the people that are visiting the customers 5 days a week. And so we take a very much a team-based approach when we're launching new products. There's so many different things that we can do. You want to limit the things that you do that are unsuccessful, and then hopefully focus most of your efforts on the things that are really going to move the needle at the company. And so we spend a lot of time with the field team and debating and discussing before we invest our valuable resources, our limited resources, on launching new products and prioritizing the ones that we all collectively agree are going to be the ones that we should focus on.
Love it, love it. This last question, also audience question, Bill, is that in this digital transformation journey for companies like yourself, what is the role of a chief information officer versus a CTO, chief technology officer, and also as of late, a chief data officer, and how do these different roles interact or play? Are these, distinct roles and have to be played by different individuals, or one individual can play or a team can play all these roles? And just in general, the role of modern IT in this whole digital transformation journey, that how do you see that?
We're a smaller company at DealerShop, so I'm not having to deal with it here, but with other companies that I'm involved with, I am seeing a lot more of the chief data officer, of course, with everything that Algo is involved with. There's data is so important, more important than ever, that you're seeing a lot more of that. I haven't seen a lot of companies where they've got both the CIO and a CTO. It's more, you have one chief technology officer. In some cases, it's chief information officer, and they're kind of serving the same function.
Yeah.
But I have seen situations where you have a chief data officer in addition to the CIO and the CTO, just given the importance of data and everything that's happening with AI.
As Bill, as we bring our conversation to closure today, any other word of advice or from your recipe book, any other words of wisdom that you want to share, or just, from this wonderful conversation, you gave so much pragmatic ideas and whatnot. Any final words, and how should winning look like on this journey? How would people know that they are doing the right things? Because many times, that's an important question, that how do we even know that we are winning?
Well, sometimes it was one of the things that we had to deal with at Axle Tech when we were investing so much in electrification, is we were taking all the money that we were making on our traditional business and pumping it into the EV business unit. And so that's a tough decision to make when you're generally, especially when you're owned by private equity and cash is so important. You're basically saying, all right, I'm not going to generate any cash. I'm going to take all that cash and invest it in something that may or may not be successful. So it's a tough decision to make, and I've heard other CEOs say that they're going to take more of a measured approach to digital transformation. I just think that I think we're in a very unique time right now with all things that are going on, many of which we touched on in the past hour, with autonomous, with electrification, hydrogen fuel cell. I don't think you can afford, the cost of ignoring change right now is greater than ever. And I feel sorry for the companies that are looking at it and only going part way. There's many companies that I've seen that have done incredible things organically, in addition to, on the M&A front or inorganically, where they're making acquisitions to support this transformation. And I those are the ones that I look up to, that are staying in front of this, because I think it's more important than ever.
Bill, thank you, man, for being so generous with your time. This was really awesome. Hopefully we'll do it again as well.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.